In an article for The Atlantic, President-elect Trump's pick for FBI Director Kash Patel is characterized as the following quote: "His true faith and allegiance belongs not to a nation, but to one man." The piece is aptly titled, "The Man Who Will Do Anything for Trump." The likelihood of his Senate confirmation is still up for debate. The writer of that piece, Elaina Plott Calabro, joins us now. Elaina, it's great to see you. And that article aged so well because you wrote it at the end of August, and here we are talking about Patel as the potential FBI director. You must have, seen this coming from a mile away.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that I really wanted to be prepared for the type of person who would likely join a second Trump term. An archetype, maybe more than a specific person. And Kash Patel, it just seemed to me, was perhaps best emblematic than anyone else in Trump's orbit of the sort of people he would be interested in putting in prominent spots and just staffing around him in a second administration.
And you write that even in an administration full of loyalists, Patel was exceptional in his devotion. Of course, Kash Patel impressed Trump very early on when he criticized what Trump calls the Russia hoax. In your reporting, what else did you find when it comes to just how far Patel was willing to go to carry water for Trump?
It's a great question. And like you mentioned, Kash Patel's relationship to Trump and his devotion to him really did begin with the investigation into the Russia investigation that he helped lead as part of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. From there, as he got into the National Security Council, we see him really strengthen that devotion in more tangible ways. Fiona Hill, who was also on the National Security Council, would testify before Congress that she feared that Kash Patel, for example, had opened up a kind of back channel to Donald Trump to try to field documents to him related to Ukraine in the midst of his first impeachment trial. She had no idea what those documents were saying, but I think it was an early sign of just his willingness to sort of subvert protocol procedure to gain even more closeness with the president. And I think another good recent example is that as Kash Patel and Trump and everyone else left the first administration, Trump, of course, brought several classified documents with him back to Mar-a-Lago. And in the question of the classification status, Kash Patel was the one who stepped forth and said that Donald Trump had verbally declassified them and that he had been there to witness. I had several sources and other outlets have reported the same that said that this was not accurate. But that's just a taste of the kind of things that he's willing to do. I'll note finally that I had a former senior administration official tell me in the course of reporting my story that Donald Trump knows that Kash Patel is the person that he can say to, look, I'm not telling you to break into the DNC, but wouldn't it be great if that could happen?
And in your reporting, what did you find out about why he is so willing to, try to appease Trump? I know in one instance, you write about an event in Houston in which Patel felt, to some extent, betrayed by the Justice Department. So can you talk about perhaps his personal experiences that have led him to not only want to work with Trump so closely, but to be so critical of what he calls the deep state?
That incident that you mentioned in Houston really is foundational to the longstanding grievance he would develop toward the Washington establishment and the justice system. Just spark notes of that were that he was a prosecutor at the time in the National Security Division of the Department of Justice. He had been in Tajikistan to interview witnesses for a terrorism case that he was staffed on. He learned that there had been a surprise hearing scheduled in Houston for another terrorism-related case, and so he has a very short window of time within which to get back to America. And on his trip to Tajikistan, he had only brought slacks and a button down, nothing formal. And so as he's en route to Texas for this hearing, he reaches out to the U.S. Attorney's Office, asks if they can bring him a tie. And for reasons that remain in dispute, there was no tie when he arrived. And so as he enters the courtroom, the judge is absolutely livid, really dresses him down for not being attired appropriately as an attorney, takes him into chambers. It was a kind of outburst, really disproportionate to the supposed crime of how Kash Patel was dressed. But what was important was not so much the incident itself, but the fact that when the Washington Post later wrote a story about this and reached out to the Department of Justice for comment, they declined to comment on the record, to defend him on the record, even though behind the scenes, his supervisors were entirely supportive of him. They were not in any way frustrated with him. In fact, were just entirely supportive. So he was angry that that sort of support was not expressed publicly through a comment. And I was told that for the next several months, he just could not let this incident go. He would go to his supervisors again and again and say, what are we going to do about this? Are you going to punish the U.S. attorney for not bringing me the tie? And finally, his supervisor said, I don't know what you want me to do. It's a presidentially appointed position. And so that really was kind of the beginning of the end of his trust, I would say, in the justice system, but also his journey with the Justice Department. He moves very shortly after that to go work for Congressman Devin Nunes on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and the rest is history.
Well, it is history, but there's a whole new chapter that is about to be written potentially, and I know that you'll be covering it all. And I'm so sorry to say we have to leave it there, Elaina, but thank you so much for your time and your insight.
Thank you so much for having me.